Okay, so part two there, I might actually turn into a part three here. We'll just talk about it this evening. But so the crucial thing is that we as humans, if we're going to create justice within human communities, we need to be able to relate to each other in loving ways. We need to take care of each other. We need to not just take care of each other, we need to take care of the larger system of which we are all a part. And so how we do that requires that we be thinking of this larger whatever in such a way that it calls forth from us a kind of willingness to act on behalf of the all, to have a sense of why am I doing this? How does this benefit to me? We're going to talk next week and the week after about what it is that we can do that actually makes a difference, that creates what we need in such a way that everybody gets what they need. But the more fundamental question is why? Why would I do this? Right? And the way that we have done that as humans historically is that we come together around some kind of mythology that says this is who we are, this is how we relate to each other. We follow some teacher who has said, you know, here's the way to a fuller life, here's the way to the realm of God, here's the way to fullness of being. Okay, but that doesn't work if we don't believe in religion because it's so contrary to science, which in fact is not really true. They're both ways of claiming the truth. It's just that folks get sideways, and scientists can get just as sideways as the religious folks can. We want something that really integrates the best of both worlds, but it's the scientific perspective that's particularly relevant for us as we're looking at the science of complex adaptive systems. All right? So as we're looking at the science of complex adaptive systems, we're looking at systems. Systems, remember, are the cognitive maps we use to understand what is real. The map says, my cognitive map says, here are certain things that are going on. Here's how I understand it. And in order to deal with reality in sizable chunks at a size that we can actually get our heads around them, we create this understanding of a system. And the system has certain qualities, functions, features, aspects. One of the features of a system is that it's dynamic. It has this stuff that keeps happening. And this stuff that keeps happening happens in a kind of loop. It keeps happening over and over again. So there's certain functions that happen, like if you're going to create a computer program, you're going to create, well, is this true, is this true, is this true, until this becomes true and then something else happens. So these if-then loops. Within what we experience as the natural world or within our own beings, there's certain kinds of loops that move towards a set point, to a kind of position of greater stability or balance. So ideally, my body is able to balance so that I have the right amount of blood sugar going on, or I'm not breathing too heavily, or my body temperature is the right place, or so there's all these ways in which the body tries to regulate itself for the well-being of the whole system. So these are called negative loops because they're moving towards, they move back from, if we get too extreme, it moves us back towards this set point. So the thermostat in my building is a kind of negative loop, which if it gets too warm, it cools it off. If it gets too cold, it warms it up, right? So those are loops that are stabilizing. We also have loops that are keep making things bigger. They're called positive feedback loops, although sometimes the positive is very helpful. It's just that it's positive in the sense that it gets bigger. So when you get the microphone too close to the speaker and it starts to whine at you, that doesn't sound like a good thing, but that's an example of a positive feedback loop. As a tree grows, each year it adds another ring. It gets bigger and bigger. So it keeps growing until the tree is too big, too heavy, too old, too decayed, something, and it dies. But it continues to grow until it doesn't, right? The economy continues to grow because we think that's the only way we can provide sufficient wealth for everybody. But it turns out we live in a finite system on the globe, and so we cannot continue infinite growth. So we're going to have to figure out, how do we stabilize that? So these are loops that arise for us as being aspects of a given system. As I'm thinking about the economy, as I'm thinking about the tree, as I'm thinking about my gut biome, or whatever it is I'm thinking about, there are going to be loops that either continue to enhance it or to stabilize it, as examples of the kinds of loops that happen. But there's also this thing that each of these systems are within a hierarchy of systems. So when we look at a particular hierarchy of systems, what we discover is that there actually is a relationship between those things that are at different levels. This is something that a dude by the name of Douglas Hofstadter figured out 35 years ago or so now, and wrote a book called Gödel, Escher, Bach, won the Pulitzer Prize, and it was so inventive. It was such a novel way that he put all of this together that people read it for its novelty and for the art of it. But he was disappointed because they didn't actually, most of them, get the main thing that he was talking about. So many years later, 10 years ago now, I think, he wrote a book called I Am a Strange Loop. So he really wanted to emphasize the notion of this quality of loop that he calls strange. And as nearly as I can tell, he invented the notion. And he said about the book, that's grammatically incorrect. It's not I am a strange loop, but I is a strange loop, because what he's talking about is that sense of I-ness, of self, which is constructed as an artifact that happens from many different levels of being. From who I believe myself to be, from who other people tell me that I am, from my genetics, from my life experiences. All of these things come together to create this sense of self, which is itself a strange loop, in that it is a loop between multiple levels, different levels in the hierarchy. The lower levels are creating the upper levels are creating the lower ones. Now, the notion of strange loop was strange when he said it, because people hadn't really noticed this before. But once you understand what a strange loop is, you discover they're not strange at all. They're everywhere. Every nested set of systems has a kind of conversation or a dialogue with the other levels of the loop. So if you're going to construct a written document, you start with letters and they form words, and the words form sentences, and the sentences form paragraphs, and the paragraphs form sections and chapters. And so you create, through this nested hierarchy, becoming more complex each level up, you create this system that creates meaning. And the meaning that is in the mind of the author of the document, well, actually the meaning came before the words. So did the meaning construct the hierarchy? Does the hierarchy construct the meaning? And the answer is yes. You have multiple levels that are working together in order to create this whole, which is this strange loop. So in any given system, there are systems within the system that make up the flow, the structure of the system itself, and it forms the fundamental nature of the thing is a strange loop. But each of these systems is part of another system, is part of a larger system, and the largest if you figure, what is the largest possible system? What is the system that contains all other systems? And within that mother of all systems, is there a strange loop? Yes. And what do we call that strange loop? God? There are some things we know about the loop that creates the loop. And we know that it continues to be dynamic and it continues to grow, and it's not finished yet. It's always doing a new thing. So the notion that God knows in advance what's going to happen, not according to this formulation. But it is true that we create that loop by the choices that we make. And that loop creates us as someone who can make the choices. We are mutually interpenetrating. God, the strange loop, abides in us and we abide in it. So I wanted to just toy with this as an idea, and I'll see when I get the third video out today, but I will see you this evening.